In this first lesson of this section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Firebase Console and make myself a new project. If you are completely new to Firebase, you probably don't have an account in here. So just navigate to console.firebase.google.com or just go to Google and search for Firebase Console. And over there, go to Firebase Console, which should land you somewhere similar to this. Google constantly changes this interface and they make better and better versions of it. For at any point anyway, look for something like this, like add project, and that's where you can add your new project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make myself a new project, say add project. And once this window pops, I'm going to say my new project is called groceries, and I'm going to choose my region, Canada, and say create project. It's going to take a little while before Google makes your new project, or essentially Firebase makes your new project. And once that is there, we can connect it to iOS or Android or other devices if we wanted to. So you should end up somewhere similar to this. It might be a little different depending on the version or the time you're using this, but it should be similar to this. And at this point, I'm going to change some stuff in here, and you kind of want to do those with me while we are here. The first thing is I want to go and find the authentication in the develop section, most likely. I'm going to find the authentication. And once we are here, I'm going to go to sign in method. And in the sign in method, we have to enable at least one of the many methods because currently we don't have any. So I'm going to say use the email and password. So for now, we can use the email and password to sign a user in or log a user in. So that's the first thing that I want to do. And then I'm going to jump back to our database. And our database, I'm going to say, I'm going to add 2 nodes in here. Don't worry much about what these are. Very soon, they're going to become very clear for you. But just so you get a sense of what we are doing is, we are going to store 2 different types of information. One type is going to be for all of our data. Those are lists and items and everything else. And another one is going to be for our users. So our users' information such as their emails or unique IDs and so on and so forth. So these are the 2 nodes that I added to our root node. This location and this one is essentially our root node where we can add children to it, and the children can help us categorize our database and help us manage it a little bit better. So this root node, I added 2 nodes to it, and the next thing that you want to do is this. You want to go to the rules, and in the rules I want to change these 2 rules to be public. So I want to say read true and write true. Don't worry much about what these things mean at this point if you are not familiar with Firebase. If you know what these are, then it's going to be easy for you. If not, don't worry much about it. What it means is everyone can read and write from now on temporarily. We want to make sure that while we are doing our development and our tests, we don't run into any issues. Then we can change these back. And it's actually giving us a little warning. 1, 2. And it's actually giving us a little warning about that as well. It's saying that your security rules are defined as public. Anyone can read or write to your database. And that's okay for now. I'm going to dismiss that. So far we changed the rules of our database. We made sure that the rules are public. Our authentication became with a sign-in method of email and password. And then we have to go ahead and make ourselves 2 applications, one for iOS and one for Android. So I'm going to go to project. I'm going to go to project settings. And then over there, I'm going to say add Firebase to my iOS app and add Firebase to my Android app. So let's see how we're going to do those. I'm going to click on the iOS. And it's going to ask me for the bundle of my iOS. So that's the name of my iOS application. If you don't remember it by heart, which I don't, you're going to go to your Visual Studio, go to your iOS application, to the info.property list, and this is the exact name. And I really suggest that you copy this to your clipboard and paste it. So I'm going to copy this, Go back there and say that's the name of my iOS application. All the other ones are optional for now. I'm gonna say register app. And then it's gonna give us a Google Services-info file. I'm gonna download this file. So it's gonna be saved somewhere on my disk. Then there are some other essentially guidelines and instructions for how to add Firebase, but these are essentially for Xcode. They are not to be used with Visual Studio or Xamarin Studio. So we don't really need to continue any of these anymore. So I don't need that. Then the next thing I need is I need to go ahead to my project setting again. And down in here, I'm going to add another project that this add app, I'm going to say Android application this time, is asking me for the name of my application again. So let's go back to Visual Studio. This time we're going to go to Android application and we're going to look for properties, Android manifest. And in here, the package name is this. So for you, it might be same or it might be different. So in here, I'm going to add that one, say register application. And this time it actually gives me a JSON file, which we are supposed to add to our Android Studio application, but we don't have Android Studio. So I'm just going to download the Google Services.json. Save file. We actually don't have anything to do in here for a while. We're going to come back to this after a few lessons. But for now, everything is set. We have an authentication mode. We have a public database. We have our Android application and our iOS application. And we have our Google Services JSON as well as Google Services info property list. I have those files. They are actually on my desktop. So in here, I have those two files, which are going to help me later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Visual Studio and I'm going to add these files to my project. So I'm going to go to my Finder, say the info plist gets added to my iOS application and JSON gets added to my Android application. So by now you should have one new file called google-services.json in your Android application and one Google Services.info-property list in your iOS application. Before we jump out of here and I forget this thing, you want to right click on your property list and say build action is actually bundle resource. So it actually becomes it gets compiled with your application. So I'm going to set it as a bundle resource. My JSON file, we are actually not going to use it for anything. It's just here so we can read some values from it. Otherwise, we're not going to actually use it for anything. I need to open that file later on and find out my API key and some other values. But other than that, we don't really need to use it for anything. So don't worry about changing its build action into anything for now. So that's about that for now. We added a project to our Firebase backend. In our Firebase backend, we made two applications. We downloaded our files and we added them to our respective applications, Android or iOS. There isn't really anything that I can show you at this point. If we compile, obviously nothing has changed. We're going to come back to this real soon and start working on these files that we added and essentially starting our Firebase section.